clouds. Hi, I'm here today with Cathy Leland, and I just want to introduce her to you. Cathy's a retired career coach, a budding writer, and a seasoned spiritual director. She helps others listen for God's voice and appreciate their uniqueness in Christ. And I will let Cathy explain more about her journey. But today we wanted to discuss what a spiritual director is and what they do, and what would be the benefits of seeing a spiritual director. So, Cathy, what is a spiritual director? Let's start there.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Sue. This is fun. To talk about my passion is a real joy. Spiritual direction is the simple gift of sacred presence offered to another, providing a gentle but tenacious encouragement to open fully to God's loving presence, and to co-discern with that person God's activity in every aspect of life. There are many definitions, but holding sacred space for another as the two of us together lean in and listen for how God is moving in their life.
Mm-hmm.
It's really all about I call them the directee. I'm the director, they are the directee. And even the term spiritual director or direction is a little misleading because I don't really direct anybody. I like to think the Holy Spirit does the directing, and I do the sacred task of holy listening, really kind of listening to the person with one ear and to the Spirit with the other.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds a little bit hard to access, like for somebody new to this. It was like, oh, that sounds a bit, maybe, woo, yeah, you said it. So what would a session actually look like? If I were to come to you, what would it look like?
Yeah. Well, and whenever I begin spiritual direction with someone who's never done it before, I always say, let's just give it a go. So first I may take 15, 20 minutes to describe what it is, to also share a little bit about me, and then to also find out a little bit about them. I like to start my sessions by lighting a candle. And that candle represents the light of Christ, whose presence is already there because God is everywhere. But lighting the candle is an intentional act to say, we're welcoming the presence of God in this place. We're actually focusing on whatever God has for us in that time. Right. So I start that way, and then I invite the directee to just sort of relax, settle into the chair or the sofa where they are, take a few deep breaths, close your eyes if that helps. I think most people feel that helps to close their eyes, then they don't have to look at the person who's across from them. Right. And then I typically start by just saying, Blessed Trinity, we receive this day and this hour and your love as presents, as gifts to us. And would you move us deeper into your transforming love as we spend this time together? And then I encourage a lot of silence. I encourage the person to sit, and silence can be difficult, especially if you're an extrovert. And I can say I'm an extrovert. And so I had to learn that. Chatty Cathy had to learn to, close her mouth and just listen. And it takes a while. I will say it takes practice. Typically the first time or two that a person does spiritual direction, they're still kind of getting used to everything around them. But trust is important, and safety is important. So that person is opening up a very tender, vulnerable place in them
Right.
uh, it, part of it's mystery. Part of it is letting go of control, and most of us like control.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
to even subject ourselves to this, whoa, it's mystery. If I can put it in a word, it's mystery. And
Really good
often,
word.
yeah, often as they start in by sitting in silence, something may come to mind. And a lot of us are overthinkers too. So we sit and think, oh, was that me or was that God? And I
Right.
often say, I often say, just go with it. If something came to your mind, then that's fine. And
Yeah.
others will say, nothing came to mind.
Mm,
So I might start with a question or two. And the question might be, how's your soul today?
right.
Or what has been on your heart lately?
Hmm.
Or how have you sensed God's love? How have you sensed a nudge or an invitation?
Hmm.
Yeah,
I love that. It's like you are welcoming something within the person that doesn't often have a space to come out and feel
mhm,
safe,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's who asks those questions in our everyday lives.
And waits around long enough for an answer.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think it's Parker Palmer who wrote about the soul is like a wild animal and it likes to hide.
Yes.
And if you were to go crashing into the woods demanding it to come out, it's not going to. But
Mhm.
if you would be willing to sit a while and listen and be still, that soul might just come out. So
Yeah.
I love that picture.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like something that is so hard to come by in our day and age,
Yeah.
but so necessary to hear what's happening within our souls.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, ooh, there's so many questions I could ask you. um, but just to get to know you just a little bit more, like what was it that drew you to this? And
Hmm.
how long have you been doing spiritual direction? And just a little
Yeah.
bit about your.
Yeah. Well, it was a dear friend that tapped me on the shoulder about 12 years ago after church one day. He said, Kathy. And I said, yeah, hey. He goes, I've been thinking about something. Okay. And he said, I think you would be a good spiritual director. And I said, I would. What's what's that? And then he told me a little bit there in the parking lot of the church, told me a little bit about spiritual direction, which he had already been pursuing. I think he was a spiritual director by that point. Now he has his doctorate of ministry in spiritual direction.
Mm.
But at the time, Dan said, you know, someone you might want to talk to is Barbara Mutch. She is the dean at Cary Theological Seminary out near UBC.
Mhm.
And she'd be a good person just for you to talk to. So off I go to make an appointment with her. And I did. And I showed up and I said, my friend Dan Heavener thinks I would be a good spiritual director. And she said, oh, well, that's nice. And tell me more about it. And she said, she did. And then she told me about the program and the training that they offered. And then she said, but before you become a spiritual director, I think maybe you should have one.
Right.
I
Yeah.
thought, oh, that's great. So she gave me the names of a couple of people, and I made an appointment with this first person. Her name was Marcia. And I think we are in our 14th year of spiritual
Oh,
direction.
wow.
And
Yeah.
she, bless her, she walked with me through the valley of the shadow of death, which was
Mhm.
the end of my first marriage,
Mhm.
and out the other side. And to have somebody who will companion with you in the deep end like that, she
Mm.
knows me well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a gift. So what I did was I went to Cary Theological Seminary for their 2-year program in spiritual formation. It wasn't a degree, I think it was a certificate or a diploma, I don't remember. And then after that, I did another 18-month program with an organization called Soul Strain. And that was very hands-on, very practical, not academic. I
Right.
mean, there was a lot of reading to do, a
Mm.
lot of reflection papers to write, which was wonderful. But, early on, I had my first directee or two. They were my guinea pigs. They were
Right.
people who knew me well enough. They were friends that let
Mm.
me practice spiritual direction on them. Yeah.
That's cool. And I love that somebody called that out in you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And to this day, and now I have been practicing spiritual direction. I'm in my, I think, 7th or 8th year.
Mm.
But this man, Dan, and I and 5 others meet monthly for what's called peer supervision.
Mm.
So we sit and help each other grow as spiritual directors. And
Oh, nice.
that's my accountability, if you will, as a
Yeah,
spiritual director.
and continuing education,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, so why would somebody choose to go to see a spiritual director? And like, how would that be different than seeing a counselor or a coach or,
Yeah.
you know, why should I come and see you, Cathy?
Okay. Well, as I see it, counseling is usually because there's a particular obstacle or problem in your life and you're looking for a solution. And so
Right.
you go with that in mind, and the counselor gives you perspective and counsels you on it, perhaps even gives you some tools to use. Um, but it's it's more for a particular problem that you're looking to solve. A life coach would be someone who I think would strategize with you. What are the things you're wanting to accomplish? What are your goals? What's your vision, your mission? And let's write it all out, and let's create an action plan. And I think that a life coach would be a lot more directive and a
Mm.
lot more, okay, you need to go away and do this, this, and this. Now, I was a career coach for 26 years, so I do know about coaching. And I often coached people who had lost their jobs and were trying to figure out what next. Often, when you lose a job, particularly if you've been let go, and your identity was wrapped up in what you did,
Yeah.
particularly if you were someplace for a long time,
Mhm.
that is a blow to the ego. And so I could be a little more directive uh,
Mm.
in the way I coached people as a career coach too.
Right.
But with spiritual direction, it's really more about paying attention to what God is inviting you to do
Mm.
as a follower. If you indeed are a believer or a follower in God or Christ, then what does that look like?
Mm.
Um, I would not say that spiritual direction is for a new Christian, a
Mm.
new believer, someone who is just still kind of the foundation is being poured or hasn't quite been poured.
Yeah.
I think spiritual direction is for someone who's a little farther along in their faith. And sometimes when you're farther along in your faith, it gets a little stale or a
Mm.
little crusty, a little boring, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think it's for people who say there's got to be more. What does that look like?
Mm. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That has been my experience.
Yeah.
You know, seeking
Yeah.
out a spiritual director was because there was like that thought, there must be more, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And so would you say it's sort of another practice that we could add to what we're already doing to deepen our connection with God and
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
discern where we need to go?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
do. I
Okay.
also think that the beauty of, I mean, there are different kinds of spiritual direction. There's one-on-one,
Mm.
which to me is the best kind. I see a spiritual director. That's required if you're going to be one. You have to have one.
Yeah.
And I I love that that hour once a month is mine, and it's
Mm.
fully, totally, completely mine. Yes, I pay for it,
Mhm.
but it is mine. And so she sits and listens to me, with me, for me.
Mm.
And it's, we underestimate the power of being listened to.
Yeah, yeah.
And she does that so beautifully.
Mm.
Um, and often will just ask clarifying questions.
Yeah.
Never in the 13, 14 years we've been together has she said, you know what you should do? Never.
I think we hear that enough, don't we?
Yeah, yeah. I've got a lot of tapes in my head that tell me that. But instead, to pose a question, what if you were to,
Mm.
or would you consider this, or how does this feel? And then you have the choice to say, oh, I'd like to try that, or yeah, I don't think so. You
Yeah.
know,
Mm.
yeah. So, yeah,
So, if someone is intrigued by this idea
hmm,
and has listened to you today and said, this is something I want to explore, how does one go about finding a
finding
spiritual
one.
director?
Yeah, there are a few different ways.
Mhm.
There is such a thing as Spiritual Directors International, so you could Google that. You could also, well, I'll tell you that the origins of spiritual direction began in the Catholic Church,
Mhm.
and it's been around for hundreds of years. That doesn't mean all Catholics know about it, but it probably clearly began there. Protestants are a little late to the party, but they are coming around and coming along. And there are a lot of Protestants that practice
Mm.
spiritual direction. Um, if you have an interest, if you know of anyone who is currently practicing spiritual direction or seeing a spiritual director, they might refer you.
Right.
If you belong to a particular denomination, you might just talk to the denomination and
Mm.
ask them. Or
Mhm.
you could even Google what schools train spiritual directors
Right. Mm.
and talk to someone there, because they would have a list of new graduates
Mhm.
and uh, instructors. And yeah,
Right.
there's a network out there.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
And if someone wanted to come and see you
Mm.
or see you on Zoom, as
Yes,
the
I
case
do
may
that
be,
too. Yeah.
um, we you have spaces at this present moment to take directees?
I do have a few spaces. Yes.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So I will include your information in below.
Yeah.
And so if someone wants to contact Cathy, and who wouldn't, um,
Excellent.
her information will be there. Um, and also, now that we've made a little bit of a connection with maybe people that are watching, is there another way that people can connect with you if they're not ready for spiritual direction, but would still like to, um, you know, hear from you in some way? Where could they follow you?
Oh, funny you should ask. Because like Sue, I am a budding writer. Well, I'm a writer. I'm a budding writer. She's been writing, but I have a website, and it's called Reflections on the Water.
Mm.
And you can find that at cathyfortleyland.com. And I would think the spelling of my name will be in the notes. But
Yes.
yeah, you can read what I've been writing. I write reflections, devotions. I'm currently writing a 52-week devotional on rewords: renew, redeem,
Mm.
restore, relax, rely. So that's where you could find me.
That sounds good. And you're also on Instagram,
I am,
dipping your
but
toe
it's,
into Instagram.
yes, thank you. Yes, Leyland Cathy. Leyland, Leyland, Cathy with a C.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Well, thank you for this conversation.
Mm,
It's been really helpful, and I hope that anybody that is interested in spiritual direction will use what you've told us and pursue that for their
yeah.
own lives.
Thanks, Sue.
Okay, thanks, Cathy. Bye.